Welcome to Bury Your Bookie, and a lot of ground to cover here today. My goodness, I mean, who would play into these kind of numbers? 4 and 1,702. 4 and 1,702. Welcome to the show, Mike Jones, and you're scratching your head saying, "What is that number, Defo? What the hell are you talking about here?" Those are some very low percentages. That is the number of times since 1996 that a team has trailed by 7 points or more with 50 seconds or less to go, either in the fourth quarter or overtime, and come out on top. Three of those occasions have occurred this year, all at the hands of the Indiana Pacers. They have three of those four wins against 1,702 losses. Under the circumstances, I heard that there were several Knick fans that jumped in a cab and they ordered the cabbie right away to just drive them straight into the Hudson River. How are you, first of all, my friend? And what did you make of that? Because there were many who were tempted, including us on the show yesterday, to take the 4 and a hook with the Indiana Pacers. That looked to be prohibitive as they trailed by 14 inside of 3 minutes to go. And a complete collapse by the New York Knicks in conjunction with an unbelievable shooting streak keyed by this Neesmith, who shot 5 for 5 on three-pointers, made 5 straight. And then you get the Halliburton play at the end to tie the ball game. That was one of those shots at the park that you have to call out, break, and then it goes in. And very improbable. Where did that leave you financially yesterday? And then on top of that, Mike Jones, what does that make you think about the series as a whole? How are you, my friend?
I'm great. And I can tell you last night, having Indiana, I'm better this morning. But I can tell you that what I saw last night ranks in the annals of Madison Square Garden events. Maybe Jimmy Snuka jumping off the top of the steel cage might rank in there with it. But I mean, Jimmy Snuka jumped off on the Knicks last night, if that's what I saw, because this was as shocking a final result as I have seen. The Knicks missed 3 free throws in the final 2 minutes by their best 3 players. And if that was Steph Curry in Aaron Neesmith's jersey, no one would be talking about LeBron James, and Steph Curry would be the GOAT next to Michael Jordan last night. I honestly believe it was as good as shooting in the clutch that I have probably ever seen. And I hope it gets recognized in the future, because if they go on to win a title, you're going to put Halliburton and Neesmith in the top 10 of paired guards to play, because of what they're doing in Indiana right now. Like you said, 3 of those comebacks coming in. You're never out of a game. You could be down 10. You better find a way to get at shooters if you're defending this team. They run at you. They're in great shape. Man, I'll tell you that. Do the Knicks bounce back from that? Well, the odds makers think so. They're making them a 5.5 point favorite tomorrow night, so they're telling you. But man alive, wow, that was just, it just blew me away. And it was as much why sports is the best reality TV is shown last night in that game. Exactly why.
How many of those shots have you made where you bonk one off the back rim there? It goes straight up in the air. And this thing was above the backboard. You thought maybe somebody was going to reach down from the upper deck and grab the ball, and comes right back through. It was reminiscent a long time ago of a shot that was made against our own Miami Heat in the 90s when Allen Houston. That was a real shot, though. I mean, ball wasn't that far off the mark, but it went rim, backboard, and in. From the
I was at that game. I was there.
Yeah. I was too, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, that thing's going to go in." But anybody that shot a basketball has made a few of those, and maybe in your lifetime, a couple of those moon rim shots where a ball goes straight up in the air. But the probability of that, I mean, literally, I mean, I think some of those celebrities in the $20,000 seats might have soiled their pants as that ball went through, and only sent the game into overtime, where once again the Knicks failed to deliver. Should be devastating. Tom Thibodeau, who looks like such a schlep all the time, and clearly would be the better known of the two coaches, I would think, going against Rick Carlisle, who the people inside the league tend to acknowledge this guy as being one of the better coaches that's ever been behind a bench or on a bench in an NBA coaching situation. But I don't know. What would you attribute that to? I mean, as you're dissecting the anatomy of a choke job, phenomenal shooting, yes, by Neesmith. You're not expecting a guy to make 5 consecutive 3-pointers from a variety of different angles. And yet at the same time, there are many people that are criticizing the Knicks, saying, well, they kind of put a lid on it. Now, You acknowledge the missed free throws, which each of their stars missed one of a pair, could have iced the game there.
Mm-hmm.
But where would you categorize this? As a remarkable comeback by the Pacers, giant choke job, Mama Cass style by the Knicks, or a little bit of a combination of both?
I'd go combination of both. I think what happens is you're just afraid of fouling. I almost go at like each time as this game evolves over the last couple decades. Do you foul the 3-point shooter when he's before he grabs into shooting position and give him 2 shots instead of 3 to let him tie the game? I've always been one, let the guy make the shot, but these guys are so good now. You just almost really want to foul. And they did foul Neesmith, and he hit 2 free throws with 12 seconds to go there. If you saw when they had a chance to tie after Towns missed a free throw, or Anunoby, one of the guys missed a free throw. And so you're sitting there thinking, I would have fouled there. And that's not the way I would coach the game. But they did. And the Knicks and he hits 2 free throws, they make it a 1-point game, and they're in the same part. It's just, to me, I just think you're protecting a lead. You're getting down to it. Do you really want to go to the line? There's a lot of mental things. We talk about this, the psychological part of betting now. You have to dig into it. This was a Knick game that they really thought they had. And as Naismith got hot and they were trying to defend him and putting guys close to him, not up in his face, but close to him, you started saying, uh-oh, if you're on the net. I'm not saying the crowd was saying, uh-oh. The players are saying, uh-oh. And I think that's what happens. And once you get off that edge, I'm not going to foul him. I can't give up a 4-point play. Do I want to grab him over midcourt? There's so many other things that you're making a decision on that shouldn't be, because you're up 5 or 7 with 30 seconds to go in the game. Protect the ball, run the clock, do it. But what happens, these guys get so into playing with pace and doing things. A couple of rush shots with the Knicks in the between the 2 and 3 minute mark, where they're only taking 10 seconds off the shot clock, 12 seconds off the shot clock. Be more conservative. Watch the game. They got the arguably the best point guard right now, who controls with his own possession, in Brunson right now. I mean, he's just great with the ball and on the dribble. I just look at it like it was a combination of, you think the game's over and it's not. And Indiana's now done it for a third time. They're the playoffs. They were 0-14-74, winning a game under a minute with 9-point lead. They hadn't won one. You got 9-point deficit under a minute, and they show that stat. I just look at it. Do the Knicks bounce back? I think they do. I think the crowd will be a little more boisterous. I think they'll get out of their shock, and I think they'll hold on to the lead this time when they have it. I think that's why you're seeing 5.5. But I don't know what happens in Indiana now. I just think that there's a good extreme edge here, and Indiana's 9-2 against the number in the playoffs. Tough.
Literally stole that first game. So puts the Knicks in somewhat of a must-win situation, if you can use that cliche this early in the series, tomorrow night. Now, we have on the other side of things, OKC down at halftime, 48-44 to Minnesota. And at that juncture of the game, you're asking yourself, well, geez, maybe I underestimated the Timberwolves. And then it looked like they brought Alex Rodriguez off the bench there to play. One of the team owners, I think, about to take over a majority share of the Timberwolves, and got blown out by one of those magnificent runs that we've seen Oklahoma City exhibit all throughout the regular season, where they'll go on a 20-2 run and seem like they were running Minnesota right out of the building. How convincing of a victory was that for you, and would you be willing to go ahead and take 7.5 with Minnesota tonight in the second game of the series with Oklahoma City?
The odds makers are saying it, and probably you're going to get it, but Minnesota's got to make an adjustment. You go 15 of 51 from 3. You're just not making the shots. DiVincenzo's left open a few times, missed some open looks. If they knock them down, it's a different game. If they don't, you're in a situation where, if they don't hit 40% from 3, you're probably in a little bit of trouble. They're going to struggle to stop SGA. I like McDaniels as a on-ball defender. He fouled out of the game with a lot of time early, like 5 minutes ago in the game. Can he stop him? We get into the head game. Can this really on-ball best defender of Minnesota stop the reigning MVP of the league? So that's what's going to come down to. Guys getting to their spots, getting their shots off. I saw OKC take a lot less threes than normally expected. Did they do their due diligence and doing the scouting and saying they can beat this team at the rim? I thought Gobert, as much as he's a nice defender, he doesn't offer the offensive, I guess, the ability to scare a little bit out of Holmgren and Hartenstein. So they have a freedom to roam. They're quicker big men that can guard a perimeter player. So it offers them to play and help side defense. I just don't think you can win shooting 53s if you're not going to make a high percentage if you're Minnesota.
All right. Now, can you be within 7 and a hook?
No. I think I'm going to go out and say OKC gets off to another one. What I saw there last night, up 4 and getting beat by 30 in the second half was, they can come at you forces. They have 10 deep. They're 10 deep. I saw a lot in Game 7 in the Denver series that might have given them the confidence to go get to where they are. I think they're going to the finals, and Minnesota hopefully will have to prove me wrong. But that's what I think. I think just the line not moving in these games are different. I thought Indiana was a play in Game 1 just because I thought they caused the Knicks a little confusion. I thought Minnesota was the play in Game 1 just because the Dogs had won outright in the previous 4 series in Game 1s. Again, when you go to these stats, sometimes they're misleading. Watching that first game, I said, well, then I watched last night and said, well, I'm going 0 for 2, and then the miracle on 34th Street happens, and then you're kind of all of a sudden thinking, wow, here are we? So I just like it. I would say OKC until I see something else, and I don't know that I wouldn't be on the Knicks the next game just because I think their series is on the line and people still think they're the better team.
I love the Superfly Snuka reference. The best thing I ever saw at the Garden also was involving pro wrestling many, many years ago. And that was when Gorilla Monsoon, then the feared Manchurian madman, was scheduled to fight Bruno Sammartino for the World Heavyweight Championship. Sammartino, it was announced, was on a flight delay. Perhaps he was coming in via Newark Airport, and they were having the same problems now back then. And so he doesn't show up. And substituting for Sammartino was Arnold Skolin, the golden boy from White Plains, New York, as he was always introduced. Now, Skolin was one of those guys that I don't think he ever won a match, even though he was labeled as the golden boy. Monsoon is about to come flying off the top rope and apply his Manchurian manslide, which was a submission move, and about to just obliterate Skolin, who's lying almost unconscious, supposedly on the mat. And as he's standing on the top rope, he looks up and sees coming down the aisle with his suitcase still in hand and his dress suit on, not wrestling outfit. Here comes Sammartino, who then comes running down the stairs, and before Monsoon can apply the killer move to Arnold Skolin, comes in there and intercepts him with a forearm slam, has Monsoon in trouble, picks him up for his classic airplane spin, does the Italian backbreaker, and wins the match.
Crazy.
I don't know that you could conceive of anything better, but that was right there with the Indiana Pacers comeback last night. All right, let's shoot some pucks here.
Yeah.
Last night, I'm going back and forth between the basketball and the hockey. It appeared the Knicks had things under wraps, so I turned away from that game just in time to catch your Edmonton Oilers take a 3-1 advantage on the road against the Dallas Stars, the team that was favored to win the Cup before the tournament, and I would imagine still is a rather low-priced proposition now that there are only 4 teams left. And Dallas, an especially tough place to play. A lot of people in the NHL say it's the most raucous of arenas. I've never been there, so wouldn't be able to comment personally on that. But certainly it seems to be applicable as you watch the games on TV and hear the crowd. Edmonton up 3-1, sailing. They'd won 8 out of 9 since those opening 2 losses to the Kings in the first series. Seemed to be very much on their game, and in a blink of an eye, it was 4-3 Dallas. Power play goals, 3 power play goals in the third period, and they go on to win at 6-3. So where did that leave you with regard? I mean, look, the 8 out of 9 was very impressive by Edmonton. Is that enough of a blow to their momentum to make you think that Dallas prevails in the series, or do we still have to see a lot more?
Going to the third period, you can get 972, I think, on Dallas. I saw. I always look at these live lines. I didn't really check the Knicks down 15. Up 15, where Indiana you could have gotten if you had a parlay 100, probably would have gotten you 8,000 if you picked them right, on these log underdogs. Dallas had done it against Colorado. I was staring at it. Had the power play to start the third period. I said, if they can get one here, you never know. And then sure enough, shot gets a little deflection, goes over Skinner's shoulder. And then you start thinking, okay, now what happens with Skinner? Skinner had been struggling throughout the playoffs, although coming off 2 shutouts in a row against the Knights. You're starting to think, hey, okay, he's got something going here. And then another power play goal. And next thing you know, you turn back and it's 3-3, it's 4-3. I'm flipping back and forth between the games. And I'm like, wow, what happened here? And then You listen to the commentators, 3 power play goal. You just can't take stupid penalties. But for me, what I saw in the first 2 periods wasn't as dominant, was more dominating than watching the Knicks in the fourth quarter. Edmonton was beating people with those pucks. They looked stronger. They looked faster. McDavid was causing guys to fall over their feet backwards. You just felt so comfortable watching Edmonton saying, wow, this is going to be a rematch of the Stanley Cup Finals again. Get your tickets down here. It's going to be Edmonton. I sent it out. And the Mama Luke that I am, kids in there. Next thing you know, Dallas comes back. And next thing you know, I'm looking up and I'm seeing not only do you cover the plus, the 900, you probably got minus 1.5 plus 2,000 or plus 3,000 if you thought they could win by 2 or more. So again, you think you're watching Edmonton and the Knicks, and in a blink of an eye, it turns out it's Dallas and Indiana, which makes sports again so great. And for the gambler, the heart attacks, the pressure on your chest. You just don't. Where is this coming from? How is he take it? You go to sleep at night saying, "Wow, what could happen next?" These playoffs on both ends, both sports have failed to real reality.
Well, and it gets back to a theory that we used as a reprised way of thinking and approaching these things from a degenerate standpoint, is that you have to be patient enough to wait until one team is hopelessly down, completely out of it, facing insurmountable obstacles to try to get to the winner's circle. And that's the time to go ahead and send it in, as you said, because you would only have to be right. I don't know if
1 out of 10, 1 out of
1,702 losses would work. But we've seen this in evidence all throughout the postseason in both sports, where the team that seemed to be in an impossible hole, much like journalism was when he was getting buried in the stretch of the Preakness, that would be the time to go ahead and take the rubber band off the bankroll and spring. And if you're right 1 out of 1,000 times, you're probably well ahead of the game. All right, you referenced the game that's tonight. The Florida Panthers looking extremely impressive and a dominating performance from the second period on against Carolina, who were favored in that game. I would imagine they're probably getting a small edge tonight in terms of the money line. But did you see enough there to convince you that Carolina, who's been routinely swept out of Eastern Conference Finals throughout the history of the franchise, and was just 2 years ago by the Panthers as they made their way to their first Stanley Cup since 1996 Stanley Cup Final when they lost to the Las Vegas Golden Knights, did appear to be the dominant team in game number 1. I don't know if you attribute that to some ring rust on the part of Carolina. What do you make of tonight's action?
Well, you watch the first period the other night and you say to yourself, wow, the Panthers are back to giving up these odd man rushes. Bobrovsky's standing on his head. You're out of the first period 0-0, and you're thinking this could cave in any minute for the Panthers. And then Seth Jones breaks in and makes a great shot over Anderson's shoulder, 1-0, and seemed to open up the floodgates. And you felt as a Panther fan, oh, here we go. Confidence is there. They get it. Brad Marchand has given us more than you can even imagine the last couple games. The frontline players, they play with the puck. They don't shoot enough, but sure enough, they get it done. They put it in the net. So you can't challenge Maurice and what they're doing in Florida. The line does what they lines do. You figure the team, Carolina, desperate for a win. The line goes from 25 to 30. Makes absolute sense. It should be 40, probably 45, and it's not. Tells me maybe that, Florida might be the side here, plus 110. Taking them out. Maybe you got to prove to me, instead of laying juice, take the juice, say, okay, I saw game 1 and said, okay, that Florida's got enough here. They're deeper, it seems like, in the third and fourth lines. The goalie edge clearly, I think, is in this series is definitely for Florida. Tough to bet Carolina here. If I had to take it, I'm going to sit there and watch or take Florida.
Would definitely be worth a sniff. We recommended that in game number 1 the other day. That look, Florida's probably got a better team than they had even last year, in the opinion of many, especially with these late season additions of Marchand and Jones. Another brilliant maneuver from the front office, and Bill Zito, who I think right now would have to be credited with being the most effective executive, maybe even in all of sports, for the way that he's made these late season acquisitions, both last year and this year, and reconfigured the team before that with the Tkachuk for Huberdeau deal a couple of years ago that clearly changed the dynamic of that team, although Tkachuk has been relatively silent so far in the last portion of the postseason. They did get some of their guys coming back. Are you inclined to bet any of the individual props in these hockey games?
The props to me are kind of tough. They're really not unders. You can't bet like under the guy won't do this. I kind of would rather see it a low scoring game and go unders. They always say over 1.5, over this, over that. When you get on the Hard Rock app and stuff like that. Barkov assist maybe. I would probably go under Matthew Tkachuk. I don't think he's I think he's still a little banged up. You could see he's not as sharp as he's been years past. So I think they're getting away with it. I mean, right now, I'd almost say that second and third lines are the really productive. You're getting guys scoring goals that you wouldn't normally think. I think Ekblad has 3 or 4 goals. Seth Jones has goals now. So the defensemen are taking that hot, pinching low and making things happen defensively, and they just feel comfortable that these odd man rushes, they have the best goalie out of the 4 right now, and feel, maybe that leave it on Bob. And Bob's saying, okay, I'll take on these 2-on-1s. I can stop all this, and it's working right now for the Panthers. So, I'm not too much for the props on hockey. I just understand I have a tough time following the puck as it's on the TV screen, let alone the prop in hockey. But yeah, I like I would say the Panthers in the series. I would even jump on them now, probably as a bigger favorite. Just of what I saw, I didn't think these games would be as dominating. Panthers really, after they broke the ice, it seemed like they were controlling the game, and now we got to be in the Carolina's head a little bit.
All right. Any baseball on the ledger tonight?
Well, yeah. How about, if you think, looking up to the heavens, how about those Angels sweep the Dodgers, right? I go back to Jeff, and I'll ask you this: when was the last time a team laying 2-1 in 3 straight games got swept? I mean, you might see a sweep in that, but maybe laying 2-1. You don't see it too often. So you're making money with the Angels. They have not been a favorite since. They go in and take 3 from Oakland. You got to like what you're seeing there. The Orioles break their streak. You were betting against the Orioles with the Brewers, and they win a game yesterday. Take them 11 innings to win it. Snuck in a little win with the Cubs after the Marlins win a game. You got to think the Cubs are going to bounce back. They win 14-1, and they steal a 2-1 game. So baseball's been a little upkeep. DeGrom loses a tough one last night in New York, up 3-1. The Yankees, you get them plus 5-1 late in the 7th inning. You come back and you tie that game and win them. Win 4-3 game. There's been some things out there in baseball that are pretty good. But if I'm betting tonight, I'm going to take OKC and say, okay, challenge Minnesota and say, let's go. Why is the line not moving up or down? Minnesota's desperate. They're going to figure it out. Can they figure it out? Maybe this is a match made for OKC. Basically the same kind of players. They run a little bit more at you. And if they could get up a lead again and force these threes to go up, Minnesota's got to hit them to prove me wrong.
All right, I love your enthusiasm for that, and I don't even think you would have expected a sweep of a series back in the day when the Angels and I used to cover these games. Had Don Baylor and Bobby Grich and Rod Carew and company, and we're back in Nolan Ryan on the mound against the Dodgers, who were also in their heyday with that infield that was together forever with the Penguin and Bill Russell, Davey Lopes, Garvey, and a bunch of other very capable players, some great pitching. It would be hard to imagine, especially even getting 2-1. That team could have come up big, and very nondescript now Los Angeles Angels team beating the Dodgers 3 in a row. The Dodgers a little bit of decline as they were also being handled before they won that final game in the series against Arizona, who has risen from the depths of early season troubles and seems to be bouncing back and putting themselves into what is an extremely 4-team competitive NL Western Division race. All right, podcast going well with your Big Gunner podcast on No Filter. What can
we come up with the hardest. Yeah, we come up with the hardest schedule. If we can get real quick on the Giants, come up with the hardest schedule in the league. We start off with 6 out of 8 playoff teams. So if you thought we were going to get a break, it wouldn't. And I'll reference a story if I can, which I did on Tuesday. I'll share it with the gamblers that I had a conversation with Bill Parcells as we started the season in 1984 when we were out throwing the ball around. And he said, we got, that Philly and Dallas and Washington and San Francisco and the Rams, all playoff teams. I could be out of here, no problem. And I said, nope, you're going to be around okay because you picked the right quarterback this year, Phil Simms over Scott Brunner. And I'm going to go back and say the same thing for Brian Daboll. He starts off at Washington and at Dallas. If he could somehow get the ball rolling and get wins in the division, which we were 0-6 last year, and play well in those first 2 games, the pressure will get off, the fan base will get involved. He just needs to get an early start with wins. And the problem you got is after you get past Washington and at Dallas, two division games on the road, which you don't mind getting him out of the way on the road. But in this case, because of his, in his situation being on a chopping block, and then you come home with Kansas City on a Sunday night game, and then the Chargers. So you open up with our nemesis and 3 tough playoff teams. But we've had success over Washington up until last year, pretty much, so we were comfortable. We probably should have beat them down there. We were the first team ever to lose a game scoring 3 touchdowns against a team that didn't score any. That's a little giant fact of how miserable it is to be a Giant fan or a Knicks fan this morning. But it's like, you just kind of look at it like we got to get off to a start, and that's going to keep it basically in the league and staying healthy. So we talked about the schedule, and we'll talk about mini camps and training camps leading in, and should be fun. And then on the gambling picks, we're going to try to stick with a little baseball. I've been giving, the Angels, I've been on them a little bit, telling my guys to get on the Angels. They've been playing pretty good once they beat them. And then the other thing, I probably give one gambling tip that I think of players and handicappers can watch early. Dodgers have a lot of strong bats, so you're always going to get an overvalued price. But I watched Clayton Kershaw pitch. His velocity isn't there. He's throwing the ball in the mid-80s. I think out of respect for what he's given the Dodgers, he'll get those 2 or 3 or 4 starts, and they might be either overs or bet against. I just think that he's just not having the velocity, and I think it's coming to an end for him, and that's kind of what I feel about, angle. That's it.
You can expect that looping curveball to be hanging like a rat and rattling around in the cheap seats if any indication was given by his first start. Mike, always a pleasure. Good stuff. A Big Gun podcast airs live on Tuesday right here at 10 o'clock on nofilter.net, and, of course, is there for everybody to see in the archive. So we'll look forward to that. And look forward to talking to you again next Monday, hopefully as you display a big wad full of cash right here on the show. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. And that's today's edition of Bury Your Bookie. We'll do it again tomorrow with the professor who's been, of all things, what do you care what you're betting on if you're winning? It's not called gambling. It's not called winning. It's called gambling. But in the case of the professor's selections on Australian rules football, impeccable so far this year. And, of course, we'll have a big board for you as well for some entertainment value. So for Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in to this morning's edition of Bury Your Bookie.